Welcome to Unit 5, Lesson 4. Today we're going to be continuing talking about the nerve impulse, and in particular we're going to talk about sending a chemical signal. So last day we talked about the electrical signal. Today we'll focus on the chemical signal. And for part 1, we just want you to become familiar with the structure of a synapse. So part 1 is the mandatory viewing. And then part 2, the other learning outcomes, will be covered in class and is optional unless you were away. So just before we start looking in detail at the structure of synapse, we just kind of have to consider what the overall structure of the synapse is. And we're going to begin with the fact that there's many neurons, and we should be very comfortable with what the different parts are now. So this end is the dendrite, and its job is to receive chemical signals. Then what's this part with the nucleus? You said cell body? Excellent. And its function, in one word, housekeeping. And then running the length here, that's the, very good, axon. And it carries the electrical signal. If you're watching this and seeing the letters disappear, this seems to be a fun game that Word likes to play with me when I get too many complex figures. So I may have to stop and pause to save it and see if we can get it to avoid playing the disappearing game. And at the very end of the axon, we get an axon terminal, which its job is to convert electrical back to chemical. And last day we talked about how we needed both electrical and chemical, electrical for speed and chemical for control. So this is where the control point is, where we're converting into chemical, and we can have many different chemical signals feeding into any given dendrite. So what we're going to focus on today is this area right here, which is called the synapse. And as you can see, at a synapse, you can have multiple neurons feeding into the next dendrite. So the signal would be going this way, and this way, and over here, that way. Okay. So what we're going to look at on the next page in detail is that structure of the synapse. So to take a closer look at a synapse, I've actually drawn a diagram using my computer, and I've zoomed out right now so we can see the entire synapse. So a synapse is actually the entire area across here, including what's in the brackets. So this you're used to us calling an axon terminal. So that's the axon terminal of one neuron. Then there's a gap, and then there's the dendrite of the next terminal. And this axon terminal, because it happens, or more importantly, let's look at the gap. The gap is called the synaptic cleft. That's its technical name. That's the space between two successive neurons. Because the axon terminal is before the synaptic cleft, what's it called when you go into the hospital to get work done before an operation? It's called your pre-op, but pre meaning before, so this is called the presynaptic membrane. It's just another name for the axon terminal. So the presynaptic membrane belongs to one neuron. Then we cross the synaptic cleft and we get to what would make sense. What do you have after your operation? If you said post-synaptic, you'd be correct. So the next dendrite on the next neuron is called the postsynaptic membrane. And when we consider the presynaptic membrane, the synaptic cleft, and the postsynaptic membrane all together, that's what is the synapse. And now I just want to show you a few little details that we're going to talk about when we explain how this works. The first is, this is supposed to represent a very special type of vesicle called a synaptic vesicle. In it, it's carrying chemical messengers. The chemical messengers are called spelled that wrong. All one word, I'm just going to hyphenate it for lack of space, transmitters. Or more affectionately, just NTs. And here, very important part, the little green channels, these are voltage gated calcium channels. I could have planned my writing a little neater, I think. And over here, the red guys, with a special little circle on them, they're called ligand gated channels, or more simply, receptors. Okay, so those are all the little key parts. You should recognize the sodium-potassium pump here, and these are our voltage-gated sodium channels, and the blue are voltage-gated potassium channels. And at the end of a presynaptic membrane, we also have voltage-gated calcium channels. And we're going to talk about how these different parts come into play in part 2 of the video. So that's the end of the mandatory portion, just making you familiar with the structure of the synapse. And that's part 1, which is mandatory. And part 2 we'll pick up in the next video and discuss how these actually come into play to transmit the chemical signal across the synapse. Now, just for fun, let's see if we can find where all those little letters that disappeared when I was writing went. Usually they're hiding somewhere further down in the screen. My ghost letters, I print them one place and they come up somewhere else. There they are. There's all those lines that disappeared as I was writing them. So I don't know why this glitches. If anyone out there in the internet world does know what this glitch is about, or can recommend a program similar to Word where I can do these drawings without it glitching, that'd be most appreciated. If you have any questions about part 1 of the structure of the synapse, please come see me. Otherwise, I'll see you in class. Have a good day.